Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everybody. Good morning. Looks like everybody's in a great spirit. Had a great last night, great night before. And now you are on the first ID Pro track, which means either you're already a member or you're on a track to be one. So we have an absolutely great list of speakers for you. And the first one, I would like to come on. Listen, she will introduce herself. Thank you very much, and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you for coming. I know last night's party was awesome, so I'm glad to see so many of you out there today. I'm going to be talking about how to train an identity engineer, a firsthand account of my journey becoming an identity engineer on the job. And I want to demonstrate the value in reskilling internal employees to fill those technical roles that are so difficult to hire for. I hope to encourage managers to look internally on their teams, to find people with talent and goals to become more technical, or even better, encourage individual contributors in the audience today to talk to their managers and take the leap into becoming an identity engineer. To start, I will introduce myself. My name is Alyssa Kelber. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, about 20 or 30 miles north of the Twin Cities. And in November of 2017, I moved to Richmond, Virginia. And at that point, my company, Thomson Reuters, opened up a cyber fusion center. From there, I have since met my fiance, Josh, and we bought our first home together, and I became a dog mom to Dawson and Oakley. If you hit next slide, oh, there we go. Okay, catch these up here. There we go, Oakley and Dawson. And outside of work, you will most likely hear me talking about what concerts Josh and I have been to most recently and what we have coming up next. We go all over the place for concerts, and actually I think our next stop is Ohio for a festival the week after next, which I'm really excited for because it means I get a vacation. All right, professionally, I am an identity engineer. I work on the SSO and MFA team, on the Enterprise Identity and Access Management team at Thomson Reuters. Prior to becoming an identity engineer, I started at Thomson Reuters as an intern in 2007, focusing on desktop engineering and the desktop support groups. From there, I was hired full-time after graduating college in 2013. I started as a technical support analyst on our internal help desk team, and then in 2015 became a compliance analyst, focusing on data center security. And then in 2017, Thomson Reuters really made a large company shift to prioritize security. At that point, I became a program manager for shared security services within our information security org. And that's really where I got my first taste of identity and access management, and really where I started finding that I actually had a passion for this. Then about this time last year, I transitioned into an identity engineer role. And this is the story of what the last year has looked like. So I want to start by talking about the difficulties in hiring identity engineers. I'm sure all of us in the audience can relate to the difficulties in recruiting and finding people to fill those roles. It's hard to find folks with technical experience that you are looking for. And the already small number of qualified applicants is narrowed even more by location strategies. And then factor in salary, because those job hunting are aware that they are few and far between, and a lot of times their salary is out of reach for companies. And then niche skills. Are you looking for someone who knows a specific vendor? Are you looking for someone who knows maybe a new and emerging technology that is not very common, or someone who can support legacy technology that isn't the new and exciting thing that people are learning right now? All of these combined make it so difficult to hire. And everyone out there is looking for very similar identity unicorns, and there's just not enough to go around. So what do you do? you train your own identity and access management engineer. The thesis for my presentation today is that organizations can be successful in reskilling internal talent to fill technical identity roles if the following criteria are met in partnership, which is really important, between the employee and the employer. Recognizing interest and value, successfully navigating information paralysis, successfully managing setbacks and challenges, and then, of course, measure and recognize value to the organization. So, to jump right in with recognizing interest and value, I am going to share my story from my perspective. A lot of the questions you'll see on the next few slides and the information provided is what has helped me along the way, but I hope that folks in the audience can take that back and relate it to them personally and help guide them to determine their own path. So how did I get here? How did I go from program manager to identity engineer? Well, it all started during a year-end review when I was asked about my future goals, and specifically, what job did I want 2 to 3 jobs from now, which was very much different than thinking about what my next role was. I thought about it, and I was at a point in my career where I needed to decide if I wanted to stay on the program and project management path or if I wanted to go down a more technical path and become a technical leader. For me, I chose a technical path. The goal job I chose 2 to 3 jobs from now was director of strategy. This gave me a spot to work backward from in terms of determining what I needed to do between now and then. So I have this end goal in mind, but how do I get there? And at that point, it's looking at myself and someone in that position and understanding where I may have gaps in experience, knowledge, and training, and identifying areas that I could learn and coming up with that learning plan. So I have this end goal in mind, and director of strategy is broad. Technology is broad, and I had to look within and understand what made me excited, what really energized me, and that was identity and access management. Again, identity is huge. So what area of identity did I want to look into? Going back to that, what energized me, it really started to click in when I was proactively finding projects related to multi-factor authentication and going to my leadership and asking to lead projects to fill gaps or to solve problems related to MFA, or even looking up SSO outside of work, which quite frankly, I never did before. And of course, there's networking. I am lucky enough to work in an office with a lot of identity professionals. And so I asked them about their day-to-day. If you work in an office that doesn't have identity professionals, I highly recommend ID Pro, the identity professional organization. They have an awesome Slack channel where there's so much information shared. And in addition to that, so many kind people out there willing to help you on your journey. So I have my plan, I have my goal and the area I want to focus on, and now it's time to start, which brings me to the second criteria mentioned, successfully navigating information paralysis. Sure, all of you feel it as it's the last day of the conference. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of opinions and ideas, and it's hard to sift through that, especially being new. So it was a age-old question of where do I begin? For me, I needed to get out of my head and onto paper all of the different areas of learning. This list is specific to me. I needed to learn cloud infrastructure as we were building our platform in AWS, identity protocols, product-specific information. I figured I should probably learn how to use ping federate since that's what our platform was, and other basic technical skills. After I created the list myself, I reviewed it with my team and got their input. They're the subject matter experts, so I definitely wanted their guidance in where to start and how to start prioritizing that list. And finally, I reviewed it with my manager and he helped me prioritize. It's very important to be on the same page as your manager so they know where you're at through the learning process and can help you along the way, connect you with different individuals, send you news articles and whatever else. So now that I had the list identified, I realized that I had already learned a lot of lessons. First and foremost, everyone has an opinion and everybody has advice, but not all of it is absolutely necessary. I know on Tuesday morning, Pam and Hutch and Ian talked about an introduction to identity, and they mentioned several times that if you ask someone in the audience, or if you ask 3 people in the audience about MFA, you're going to get 6 or more opinions. Exactly my point here. Secondly, you don't need to learn everything right now. I have the tendency and the drive to say, you want me to learn AWS? I'll go home and learn AWS and come back tomorrow and can do it, which that doesn't work. It takes a lot of time to learn things. So picking a starting point, accomplishing it, and then revisiting that learning list helps sort of manage that information overload. And then really being flexible. We all work in technology and we all know things change very quickly. Company strategies change and business decisions change all the time. It's really important to be able to adapt to that. My personal recommendation is focus on no more than 2 information areas at one time. If you are studying for a certification such as Security Plus and learning about AWS, call it good there. You are working, so you have day-to-day job responsibilities that still need to be done at that point. So I have my learning list on what to learn, but how did I learn? I honestly spent a lot of time spinning my wheels on where do I learn? Do I go to online training or books or articles or people? And for me, these are some of the things that were most helpful. Obviously, Google. At certain points, I think I had 2 or 3 front and back notebook pages of just lists of things I write down in meetings. That never ends. Again, the ID Pro Slack channel, and they now have a bibliography that is extremely helpful. In fact, all of those books are from the bibliography. I did read the first one, and I definitely plan to read the other 2. And then Pingtopia. This is new to my list. We are a Ping customer, but they just introduced a customer, oh gosh, I don't know how to explain it, but it connects you with other Ping customers. And there's great discussion. You meet other people who are working in the same platforms that you are. And the best part is that it's gamified, so you get points, and that's awesome. There's online training, tons of opportunities out there from free and paid, setting up your own personal cloud environment, vendor-specific training, and then job shadowing. It's pretty obvious, but I wanted to mention that while job shadowing, I found that I often was thinking about my grocery list and not watching what they were doing. So I helped with documentation while they were working or reviewed the documentation that they had already created. That really helped. Which brings me into managing challenges and setbacks. Throughout this whole time, I've been learning and figuring out how to learn while still doing day-to-day tasks. And there's been a lot of challenges and some setbacks in there as well. I've already mentioned navigating information overload. That probably will never stop in your career. I'm sure everyone in the audience is overwhelmed by the amount of identity information out there today. But going into patience. Patience is really, truly a virtue. And I honestly think if you ask my coworkers, or especially my fiance, this is very close to my spirit animal at least half the time. I am not very good with patience, but learning a new discipline, the technical skills that come along with it, and also how to think as an engineer, because it takes a little bit of a mindset shift, comes with time. And that's not something that's going to happen overnight. And just like Rome, identity was not built in a day. You are not going to become an identity expert or even the expert in SSO or MFA for me. It's important to be eager and curious and again, flexible, be able to adapt with changes, and persistent. Don't give up, because it's a journey. It's not, I should say, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Also, craft a way that works for you to see progress. Only you know what that looks like. For me, I took that list I started with of different areas to learn about and created a learning plan, which basically meant I made a checklist out of that list, which I think I like checklists more than lists, honestly. And those then became my goals. I took this crazy mess that was in my head when I started, and I was completely overwhelmed, and basically made it into an actionable plan that I was able to check things off and was like, okay, I'm making progress. And that really helped. Additionally, I set dates to complete certain training. This was important because, along with patience that I lack, I also procrastinate. And by setting dates with my manager, it held me accountable to actually getting stuff done. And that was very helpful. And lastly, and this was more of a challenge in the beginning, and I have thankfully overcome, I felt as though I was not helpful. I just kind of sat in the background and wasn't helping the team. I'm sure at least once a week, John and Sean from my team heard, I don't feel like I'm helpful. And really came down to me remembering my strengths. Just because I was taking time to focus on my weaknesses did not mean my strengths weren't still important. It was, in fact, that my strengths that got me to where I was. Also, completing tasks that are less technical. Just because you're in a technical role as an engineer does not mean that you spend 100% of your time programming or coding. In fact, it's mostly not that. And don't be afraid to accept stretch tasks. Test the waters, see where you're at, see what you can do with minimal help. And that's how you really start to grow and challenge yourself. So I'm going to shift the perspective a little bit and look at this from leadership perspective, because they are also on the journey with me. I interviewed 2 leaders from my organization who I've worked for a couple of years. Ryan Boulay, Vice President of Shared Security Services, which includes the identity and access management org that focuses on enterprise identity at Thomson Reuters. And John, the Podboy, Senior Director of Identity and Access Management, focusing on authorization and authentication services. Now, I have worked for Ryan and John for about 2 years, and honestly, it's been a long 2 years. But in all seriousness, they are fantastic leaders, and the journey would not be the same without leaders like that. It really comes down to people who are passionate about identity and passionate about helping junior professionals grow. Some key takeaways from the interviews I had with both Ryan and John included what they look for in an employee to determine if they are a good fit for this opportunity. And that really came down to recognizing their employees' inner traits. What are their goals? What motivates them and encourages them to take the initiative and drive their career forward? And of course, they need the aptitude to learn. Additionally, what benefits are there in training versus on the job? Ryan stated this from a really unique perspective that kind of caught me off guard, but it absolutely makes sense. It's really a business decision. Are you going to buy or build? Are you going to hire externally or promote from internal? For TR, we have a hybrid model of our workforce and identity. We have senior engineers, external consultants, and junior engineers. So there's plenty of opportunity for mentorship and learning across the 3 different types of employees. And then John brought up a very good and objective benefit. So when you hire from outside of a company, between recruiting, finding somebody, recruiting, onboarding, and then getting them up to speed with your company, it takes about 7 to 10 months. You can avoid that delay by promoting from within and retraining somebody internally who already knows the company. Not only did I face challenges, but so did they. And I mean, other than just having to deal with me on a day-to-day basis. They had to consider so many circumstances. Where is the team at today? Where is the team going? What projects are they working on today, and what projects are coming up? And again, to my previous point, leadership and mentorship structure is crucial. You need to make sure that there's somebody on the team to be able to teach junior engineers. And you also need to make it clear that this is a journey and it won't be easy. And I think the biggest challenge in there is making it clear to the employee, at least stubborn employees like me. So when I was told that it would take 2 or 3 years to really get up to speed as an engineer, I thought, okay, let me show you. You are wrong. Unfortunately, he was right. And they also learned lessons. Ryan made it very clear that as leaders, support and encouragement is crucial. You need to act as a backstop for a sanity check and remind those engineers as they're struggling through learning this new technology and mindset that there is a goal and there's a journey and a bigger purpose than, the weekly challenge that might be in front of you. It is also a long-term commitment on both the employee and the leader. And John brought up a really good point regarding how to start out on the journey. At first, he intentionally kind of let me find my way, which was both good and bad for both of us, I think. And when asked about lessons learned, he said in the future, he would give specific tasks and direction more quickly. So I have a call to action, of course, but first I want to wrap up some key points. If you are passionate about identity, go for it. Take the leap. Drive your career forward and talk to your managers. List out your learning opportunities. Get out of your head, put it on paper, and make a plan. Again, have patience. This is a long, drawn-out process, and it's only going to make you stronger. Remember your strengths. They are what got you here, and they still are very much applicable every day. And to the companies out there, it saves time and money to reskill employees as identity engineers. So I have a call to action to those of you in the audience today. Starting with managers, look at your teams. Identify people who may want to become more technical or who want a technical leadership in the future and work with them to become an identity engineer. To the individual contributors in the room, look for identity opportunities. Talk to your manager. You own your career. It's really up to you to push for it and go for it. To my identity colleagues, offer your mentorship. We can't do this without you. We need people to learn from, and there's no one better to learn from than those of you who are in the trenches with us. And finally, to the identity industry, I know on Tuesday morning, Sarah and Heather talked about the book of knowledge that ID Pro is working on, but that is so important. If you are not already a member of ID Pro, you should join and help them because it'll only make people becoming engineers more easy. And additionally, just reach out to us with learning opportunities. Post it on the Slack channels, share with your community. And thank you very much. We are 25 minutes closer to Steve Wozniak. I appreciate the time. I think we have about 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Amazing talk, amazing speaker. Congratulations to being the first ever ID Pro speaker in our, hopefully will continue for a long time. Give it a hand to this nice, beautiful lady. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please, any questions? Anybody? Keep the microphone. Yeah, that's all right.
So, Alyssa, thank you. Looking back between, time, very beginning of time and now, were there any learning experiences you had that were surprisingly helpful? You didn't recognize at the time how helpful it would be, but since then you've said, boy, this was indispensable?
Oh yeah, I mean, all the time. I think it clicks that learning from the beginning is totally helpful now. I think a lot of times for me, my experience on our internal help desk really makes me realize now why it's important. From when someone calls in for a password reset and you have to verify their identity, it's actually important to do that. While the caller may be annoyed and you may not want to ask it as a technical support analyst, it's really crucial to do that. So I'm constantly reminded of past experiences and how they relate to identity today.
Any other questions? Sure.
Well, I don't have a question. I just want to make 2 comments and emphasize some points that Alyssa made. First, find yourself a mentor to help you with your career. And secondly, put together a development plan. If your company formally sponsors a development plan program, like my company does, make sure you put actionable items to do on your development plan with dates, as Alyssa said. If your company doesn't have a formal development plan, make your own, again, as outlined by Alyssa.
Anybody else has a question? Oh, microphone's coming.
Thanks. Did they do anything to mitigate the risk that once they've invested all of this into you to make you an identity engineer, you wouldn't go speak at a conference and get job offers to leave?
Should we ask the people in the front row?
Yes, coming in this week, they said, you know, you're probably gonna get some people to reach out to you, but really it's, I think, having confidence in the culture that they've cultivated at Thomson Reuters. It's a fantastic opportunity, and on days of frustration, I won't lie, I could be like, I can go get a job somewhere else. But ultimately, for me, it's the culture and also the investment in me is just as much, it goes 2 ways. So why would I want to leave a company that has already put so much time into me and is willing to help me get to the next level? I think is really what it comes down to.
Here, here. Anybody else? Just a second. I love that we have a lot of communication and questions. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any recommendation for leaders to help their staff overcome what I call the fear that they're not technical enough or that they get overwhelmed with technology?
Yeah, I think technical can be a variety of things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to code. It's just developing a technical acumen and understanding how things connect and work together. And I think really for leaders, taking the time to break down how something works really helps. It's one thing to know single sign-on is the thing you see when you get a Facebook pop-up in an app, but how does that work? How does it all connect, and what is the bigger picture? I think that really helps folks understand the technical aspects of it.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Give a big hand to this incredible speaker. If you have any questions, you can ask her after. Thank you very much, and I hope you stick around for the next very, very exciting